Every day there's new information about these near-Earth asteroids. What's really going on, and how might these asteroids and meteors be impacting our planet, be impacting social upheavals? There have been some reports about small meteors striking the atmosphere. There are several reports from the last several months. This is nothing that is being reported to be catastrophic. It could be a sign of where we're going. So, what we're going to do now is listen to a segment from the Coast to Coast AM program from the year 1994. That was actually a period in which I remember staying with my grandmother in Longview, Washington. Ruth really enjoyed Coast to Coast AM. She didn't really subscribe to all the ideas on the program, but I think that it would be more than a little bit ironic that I would be remembering both her as well as a very special Coast to Coast archive program. So the guest is Lori Toy, and she delivered that warning in 1994. Perhaps at that time she thought that it would occur sooner rather than later. So we will now go to that clip. Stand by.
From somebody you've never heard from before. And here's why. A neighbor of mine here in Little Pahrump, Nevada, said, "Hey, Art, I've got a map I think you'd be interested in. And it shows what a future America is going to look like. And it's called I Am America." And he brought it over, and it's, I don't know, 2.5 feet by probably 2.5 feet or a little more. A big map. It's a big map, and in a lot of ways, it's kind of a worrisome map. Or maybe not. We'll find out about more of that from Lori here in a moment. Her name is Lori Toy, and one of the most worrisome, immediately noticed things, as far as I was concerned, is that I'm not on the map. When I say I'm not on the map, I mean Nevada, for the most part. About 95% of it appears not to be on the map. And, in fact, a great deal of what's west of the U.S. Rocky Mountains appears not to be on the map. A good, healthy portion of Middle America seems to be a river. In other words, these are massive Earth changes. And here's a little piece of literature that came with the map. It says, "This map was inspired by a dream received in 1983 by a young mother of 3 children. In this dream, Lori Adele, I believe it is, Toy, met 4 Tibetan masters who spoke about the prophecy of Earth change and unrolled the first original Earth changes map. It was a dream that was mystifying and startling, but promised a future of positive change. In 1988, Lori had received more Earth changes information, and captivated by the stunning detail, compiled these prophecies into the I Am America map of Earth changes. Supported by a team of local friends, a full-scale model of the Earth changes map was built. Then she began to talk to groups about her experience and the prophecies from the Ascended Masters. In May of 1989, 1,000 free copies of the prophetic map were sent to New Age centers and publications across the United States. A lot of people might view this as just a money-making gimmick that is here to sell and exploit fear, money. Encouraged to continue, though, to release the material to the public, Lori struggled personally with the ethics that this Earth changes material would be either misinterpreted or misrepresented. Beloved Sandana, I believe it is, I'm sure I'm going to get corrected on that, sponsor of the project, repeated, quote, "Send this message to the Earth with love." So she listed her home with a local realtor, sold her house. She committed to sharing the I Am America map with the rest of the world. Her home sold in 2 hours, and the first 1,000 posters of the map were printed. Now you're going to hear about it. Let's go down to Arizona and find out what in the world this is all about. And so here from Arizona, we'll find out where is Lori Toy. Lori, hi.
Hi, Art.
Hi. Lori, where are you in Arizona?
We're in Payson, Arizona, which is right in the middle of the state.
Okay. All of this came to you in a dream, Lori?
Yeah. Boy, it was a pretty surprising experience. Real surprising for me. At that time, I was living on a farm wife, 3 children in diapers. So you can imagine how I felt having a dream of such a tremendous scope. I mean, you look at something like that and you think, boy, am I folding too many diapers?
Yeah.
But it's really interesting, the evolution of the story, how it kind of came into fruition and how we work at it and with it now. I don't know, Art, how you feel about this, but a lot of times we talk about having many lifetimes in lifetimes.
Sure.
And I know, for instance, I can point out about 4 different lifetimes I've experienced, even up to this time.
Are you talking about lifetimes within this lifetime?
Yeah, within this lifetime. I have a lifetime, up to high school. I have a lifetime that was in college.
Oh, of course I know what you mean, yes.
That was this farm wife when I received this dream. Then I had a lifetime working at my own magazine, which I published and taught me a lot about doing projects of this nature. And now I have this lifetime working with Earth changes. And I've spent the last 6 years of my life dedicated to working with these prophecies and working to develop a real broad-based understanding of what this type of experience is about, what it means, and the potential that it can unleash for all of us.
Lori, why do you think that what you had was not just that, a dream, fantasy, not reality? Why do you think it was instead prophecy?
It was different.
In what way?
It was, I had full consciousness. I don't know if you've had this experience or not, but I've had this. It doesn't happen a lot, but it does happen.
Well, wait a minute. Were you asleep at night when you had this dream, or was this a daytime occurrence?
I was asleep at night, and then I had this experience that was real. And what happened in the dream, or what I would call now a vision, as I've studied these things, I've learned there's a big difference between a dream and a vision.
Right.
And this map was unrolled in front of me, surrounded by what I came to understand later were 4 Tibetan masters, and they revealed this new map of the United States. But it wasn't later until 1988 that I began to, in a sense, unravel the mysteries that were contained in that map. The dream was a very profound experience for me. It reoccurred for 3 months.
Oh, boy.
I remember even talking to a friend about it, and I said, this is so unusual because I keep on having this dream. And she says, well, a lot of the ancient prophecies spoke about a time when the earth would change. And I've studied them a little bit, and she says, Lori, don't worry about it. This is a good thing that's happening because this is going to be a time not only where the earth will change, but because of that, people will change. And we'll have what they call a golden age. And I thought, that's kind of interesting. But you know how everything is sort of a point of departure in life.
Sure.
And that dream was a point of departure for me.
Well, what unnerved me, Lori, was looking at this map. We discussed for just a moment before airtime the ancient prophecies business on MDC. You saw that?
Yeah, I saw part of it. I didn't see all of it.
Okay, well,
the tail end.
Yeah, a lot of the prophecy regarding Earth change paralleled exactly what I see on this map, and that unnerved me a little bit. How detailed were your dreams?
Very detailed. And, in fact, later on in 1988, when we worked to compile all the information through the process of meditation and channeling, people were just amazed because they said, this is the most detailed information we have ever seen brought forth in this manner. And it surprised me, too. In fact, at that time, I was living in a small town in northern Idaho.
Mm-hmm.
I worked locally, had a small graphic design and advertising agency. I was well known in the local region, and I didn't want anyone to know what I was doing because this was something they call, quote, unquote, kooky and weird. But it was really funny because it was almost like there was a force supporting this information to be heard, almost like a series of hands like I was walking on, effortlessly, leading for this thing. It had its own energy, is what I'm saying. It was just incredible. Doors opened effortlessly. For instance, when I made the commitment for the map to be published, my house, it really did. It sold in 2 hours.
2 hours.
2 hours, market value. It was like this was something that was very critical and urgent, and the time was now.
Listen, Lori, I'm going to say something here. If my wife came to me and said, listen, I've had some dreams. I need to publish this map. We need to sell the house. I'd say, hon, sit down. We need to have a real serious talk here.
I can understand. I can really understand. I did not even, I didn't tell my close friends. I did not tell my parents. I can appreciate what you're saying. And I came from a pretty professional background. It wasn't as if this wasn't something that I thought about before I did this, because I realized when you put this type of information out, there's a responsibility that goes with it. But I remember talking to a really good friend before we put the information out, and she said, Lori, you just don't know yet where this is going to lead, but I do feel where it will lead is a good place.
You were instructed to give this information out, am I correct?
Yes, I was instructed, and I was told to send this message to the earth with love. And that is the foundation and the mission that we carry out here at I'm America, is we work to find a way to language this work always with love, removing the fear and showing the mystical journey that is contained in all of these prophecies. And they're very full. And probably by the end of this night, if the listeners out there will hang with us, they'll feel very well fed.
Well, all right. How can you be sure these changes are positive? I mean, from my point of view, for example, here in Nevada, I don't feel very positive about it. I'm to be in the Bay of Harmony.
Yeah. When I first worked with this map, I thought literally this was going to happen. I was really afraid. And I thought, oh my gosh, I've got to warn people. That was my consciousness when I first started working with it. And who wouldn't think that?
Right.
Who would not think that? So after I got the first 1,000 copies of this map printed, I loaded them up in the back of my little 4-door car, drove down to California, and I started selling these to bookstores all up and down the coastline. It was like I had a burn in me that I had to get out there and warn these people. And I stayed probably in that flow for about 1.5 to 2 years. And then I started noticing a shift happening with me, a consciousness shift, almost a transformational thing was happening with me, myself. And it's like information would come to me effortlessly, what I would call synchronicities. How things just sort of happen.
Lori, are you sure that wasn't just a protective action of your own brain? In other words...
No, I'm positive it was not, because it happened too frequently. Anyway, what happened for me is that I began to understand what prophecy is. That of course, we were dealing with earth changes material, but that this was a work of prophecy. And so I looked up the word prophecy and what prophecy means. And for anyone listening out there, if you really want to grow and take on a transformational journey, get yourself a very good dictionary, even dated past the 30s. Start looking up the meaning of words and what they say, because the spoken word's really powerful.
Mm-hmm.
So I looked at the word prophecy, and I'm going to give you the noun.
All right.
And this is what it means. The first definition is divinely inspired utterance. The second one, utterance under the inspiring influence of religious experience. 3, this is the one that I work with the most, inspired declaration or revelation of the divine will, including moral teaching by warning, consoling, exhorting, giving an example of fellowship with God, and the like. Prophecy is based upon a spiritual teaching, and it always has and always will be.
Is it from God, Lori?
Of course it's from God. Of course it's from God. But I know many people have a different idea of what God is. And I don't feel it's up to me to define that for them. I can only share my own experience.
Well, I will ask you because they will ask you. Is your God the God of the Bible? Is your God some variation?
God is everything to me. God is the one. Of course, that took a lot for me to get to that place that I could say that God is the one. But the best explanation I've ever heard that came the closest to languaging what God is, of course, I think it's even impossible to language. I heard this from Grandmother Twy, who is an elder of the Seneca tribe in upstate New York, great Native American grandmother. And she said, it's the great inner self.
The great inner self.
The great inner self, that source that we all share.
All right, Lori, let's tell them about the map. Can you describe, do you have words, and I'm sure you must after all this time, to describe to those who cannot see it? It's a beautiful map, really beautiful.
Thank you.
But can you give a brief description of it so everybody understands roughly what we're talking about and the earth changes that are depicted here?
Okay, yes. And in fact, we have a video, too, out which would give in detail all the literal explanations of the prophecy. But basically what you're looking at are major earth changes on the west coast of the United States.
Mm.
What you'll see is a visual representation of California shattered and broken to a series of islands.
Yes, nothing more than islands.
Nothing more than islands. In the Pacific Northwest, a peninsula of land going out to Mount Shasta, and again that breaks away into a series of islands in upper state Nevada and lower state of Idaho, southern Idaho. All of Oregon's almost gone. Most of Washington State, a series of islands. With that, I can't remember the names of the mountains there, but they form a chain of islands in there as well. The Mississippi River, tremendous flooding, and the Great Lakes breaking away and forming in the Midwest and into Texas, a huge river, making the Mississippi and Missouri rivers widening 10 times over. The breakup of the East Coast, a lot of ice, a lot of wind, the lower tip of Florida sinking. And those are just real brief. That's just a real brief description of the United States.
Right. You've got it also broken into areas. Is it Gobin, the Golden City of Gobin?
Gobian.
Gobian. Golden City of Gobin.
Is a pronunciation.
Okay, that is roughly in the what is now the American Southwest.
Right. Now, those are representations of energy vortexes.
Oh.
But before we get in to energy vortexes, I'd like to back up a minute.
All right, well, so would I, because let me ask one quick question, Lori.
Okay.
These changes, whatever will bring them on, and we'll talk about that,
okay,
would result in arguably the death of millions and millions of people, with the West Coast virtually disappearing. So,
if they happen, yes, we would be looking at that.
Yes. So
we would be.
So you say it's good and with love, but that's a lot of dead people, Lori.
Certainly is. I came to this place, like I said, 2 years in my journey in working with the map. I struggled with the ethics of even working with it because I felt like this is something I'm not sure if I want to do. I have to talk about death and destruction, and I'm a happy person. I love life, I enjoy life, and I feel it's a blessing. And I struggled with that, and that was the time when I started to understand the work I had been given. And that was to understand and comprehend what prophecy is. And I came across a fantastic book, and it was the Aramaic Prose of Jesus. And it was all the translated work from the original Aramaic verses, the Beatitudes and the Lord's Prayer and that, from Jesus. And the foreword of this, written by this beautiful author, David Kloss, and he talked about how the ancient Hebrew fathers had interpreted prophecies. And I thought, this is incredible. I've never heard of anyone interpreting prophecies. And, of course, prophecy was a big part of their culture and tradition. And they would never interpret their prophecies or make a final analysis of the prophecies until they had been interpreted 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
And the first time they looked at them literally, which is what I had been doing. And I feel a lot of people that's where they're putting the focus of their attention.
What will bring these changes? Will it be earthquakes? Will a big meteor hit the western U.S.? What's going to bring this, Laurie?
Well, according to the literal work of the prophecy, it is many things. But they said the first thing that we could look for as a sign would be the appearance of a meteor in the sky, and that possibly it would impact, and get this, you'll like this one, in the Nevada desert.
In the Nevada desert. Oh, great, Laurie.
You are there.
Ground zero. It figures.
Right.
It just figures. Laurie, on that thoughtful note, I'm going to ask you to hold on, and we'll go rolling through a bottom of the hour break here. So just relax for a few moments, and I'll consider the meteor in the sky. Laurie Toy is my guest. Oh boy, it's the Earth Changes map we're talking about, called I Am America, and the prophecy of Laurie Toy. And she sounds quite serious, so I'm going to treat it the same way. Good evening, good morning, everybody. We will get back to Laurie and to your telephone calls in just a bit. If you're fascinated by prophecy and what may well lie ahead for all of us, then I suggest you stay tuned, because coming back in just a moment, Laurie Toy, the I Am America gal, and you ought to see this map. The meteor's going to hit Nevada, huh? Doggone it. It's always Nevada. We'll be back.
This is the end of side 1. Please leave the cassette exactly where it is, flip it over, and begin again.
Well, good evening, good morning. From Ground Zero, Nevada, welcome back. My guest is Laurie Toy, and she has prophecy. She has a map about her prophecy called I Am America. And if you live out where I live, it's beginning to get to be a little worrisome. Let's go back now to Laurie Toy. Laurie, hi.
Hi.
All right, so a meteor is going to hit Nevada.
Yeah, I was going through some notes here, Art. I didn't want you to feel too left out. But, in 1947, in China, over 10,000 meteorites bombarded the C2CAM Island range there. So it has happened before.
Well, yes, but China is more or less still there. Nevada will not be.
Still there. Also, there's a huge crater up in northern Quebec, Canada, 2.5 miles in diameter, where the world's largest meteorite struck the Earth.
Right, but the size of meteor that you must be talking about here would have to be quite a bit bigger, it seems to me, to do this, if that is, in fact, what does the major part of the rearranging. Is that correct?
Well, one would think so. One would think so, particularly with what the prophecies state will happen as a result of that meteorite or meteor hitting in that area.
Let me ask you about something, Lori. In July, there's due to be an impact on Jupiter that I'm sure you're aware of. Are you aware of it?
Yes, I've heard about that through our network here.
There will be chunks of a comet as big as 3 miles across that will impact with Jupiter, and when they do, they will strike each with a force of 250 million hydrogen bombs. That's not a trivial amount of energy release. And there are people talking about the possibility of Jupiter turning into a sun or not surviving the impact or what have you. So something of this cataclysmic size, I suppose, could occur. And I guess that's what's due to occur. I'm curious, where you are in Arizona, on your map, Arizona looks to be about knocked in half, or just about in half.
Yeah, the coastline runs through Phoenix.
Yeah. Where does that place you?
We're up on a range of mountains near the White Mountains on the Mogollon Rim, which is a granite formation. And they say, which this is one thing I have found out in working with Earth Changes Prophecies, that living in areas where there's granite formations, it is safer in terms of if you're hunting for a safe place to live, primarily because basalt rock explodes under pressure, particularly if you get the grinding of tectonic plates and that kind of activity going on with major earth changes. You get an earthquake, say above an 8 point. Some of that basalt will just turn into ash. In fact, most of Oregon is covered by basalt flows.
All right. Now, when might this happen? Do you have any idea? Does your prophecy give any timeline at all?
The one thing that we focus on is not so much when, but what are we going to do with our choices now?
But Lori, when does count a little bit in the sense that if I'm ground zero and Nevada's ground zero for the meteor, when might be important?
I think the when is now, and I think we're living in a time of prophecy right now. When you were talking about this activity that will be happening on Jupiter,
yes.
Did you know in 1992 that we came so dangerously close with impact with an asteroid?
I do know that, yes.
Yes, that NASA was trying to figure out a way to explode the asteroid before it was caught in our gravitational pull.
Well, I know that, I watched the news, Lori, very closely, and I would say 2 or maybe 3 times in the last 3 years, there have been Associated Press stories saying astronomers just announced that we had a close call. Had, past tense. In other words, they announced it after the fact, and as though they had only found out about it after the fact, and that worried me.
Well, I think there's a lot of things going on that we, as quote-unquote the public at large, never hear what's happening in terms of what's happening with Earth changes and the potential for these tremendous changes that will literally just alter life on the planet.
Lori, if there was a meteor headed this way and they knew it, they meaning the government or the authorities, I'm not even convinced, frankly, they would tell us.
Well, that's a pretty tricky answer there. I mean, and how to even deal with that in terms of the fear, the looting that could occur in that type of situation. You know how control-based a lot of our government is right now.
I do.
It would definitely present a scope of problems for them.
Oh, I'm sure that they would sit in their think tanks back there and conclude much of the western U.S. is going to disappear. To announce now, weeks ahead of time, that it's going to occur might save some lives, or it might cost more lives in terms of people tromping over each other and anarchy and trying to get out of the way of this thing. With the population shifts, they might conclude it would be better to say nothing.
Absolutely. Absolutely, and just let it happen. And that's sort of hopeless in a sense. That's hopeless for us, people who are getting that something is going on, and we feel like we're victims. We wonder, well, what can we do with this type of thing? And that's part of the process that we feel we really help with here at I'm America, is that we feel right now all the choices that we make in living our lives make a difference in the overall scheme of things. Now, what I'm proposing here is that our thoughts and our feelings create reality. And when you live in fear, you create more fear.
Mm-hmm.
When you live with love, you create more love. Now, that's pretty profound to think that our thoughts alone might avert a tremendous catastrophe and cataclysm, or an asteroid impacting and hitting the planet. But I think this is the purpose of these prophecies, and that's why people are getting these prophecies now, because if they're sent with love, you would think that they are sent as a warning so that we can do something to either avert the changes or assist in a gentle change, so that we don't have to go through death and destruction, but yet make a choice.
Are you saying this
for
is
love and peace?
Yeah? Are you saying this is not inevitable?
It is not inevitable.
It's not inevitable.
Not inevitable at all. Although,
is that what you were told, or what you have concluded since you were given all this prophecy?
both. I have concluded that, and also I have been told that this is not inevitable. Our choices every day make a difference. We have a saying, a change of heart can change the world. And I know for most people thinking out there, gosh, I mean, like if I start thinking every day good thoughts, we may not get as much rain in the Mississippi Valley. The point of the matter is that is very true, and there's studies that document that.
Well, we have affiliates all over Missouri, for example, where the Mississippi is presently rising once again. And you're telling me that if they think good thoughts back there, they can think this water level, Mississippi level down.
Mm-hmm. Yes, they can. Yes, they can. In fact, there was a man who did quite an extensive study, and he was linked up with Sun Bear and his work, the Bear Tribe, near Spokane, Washington. I can't remember his name, but I do remember the work that he was bringing forth, and it was incredible art. What he had done a study of different areas of the world, noting the weather and noting what was happening in the socio-economic areas. For instance, in this one area where they kept on getting really horrific rain rainstorms.
That's very interesting, yes.
Yeah, and they found out that area was suffering periodically from major mill layoffs. And every time they had major mill layoffs in that area, they had these horrific rainstorms. The other thing that they've noted in Saudi Arabia and different areas where it's really arid, they've noticed that those areas, and I'm not saying that's just a pinpoint one area, but these are all over the globe.
Well, as you say all this, though, Lori, I'm sitting here thinking, but we're ground zero here for the meteor, and if it's behavior that's bringing this on, what is Nevada doing wrong?
Right. What we're talking about there is the second stage of prophecy, and that's metaphor.
All right, look, this would suggest then that time is not a constant string ahead of us, that there are many paths that time can take. And,
that's right.
And that our path into the future is determined by our present behavior.
Right. It's determined by our choices. It's determined by choices. Let me read this to you. I got this in the mail, and I have to share this. It comes from Bob Weld of the Consciousness Network in Seattle. The thinking of consciousness, the thinking you and I know by direct experience, is without restraint. We are free to think as we wish, and all our thoughts are equally real and productive of the conditions of our experience. But some thoughts harmonize with others, and others are antagonistic to each other. The best illustration is the numerical symbolism called mathematics. 2 by 2 equals 4 is indicative of concepts that harmonize with each other. 2 times 2 equals 3 is indicative of concepts that are inharmonious. Both are equally real as concepts, but one indicates an absolute harmony and the other an inharmony.
All right. You might suggest, and I will suggest, because I live and talk about the news every day of the week, Lori.
Yeah.
And I have never seen this country in such a disastrous, torn 2 and 2 equals 3 condition in my life. I mean, we are just an absolute social mess at the moment. And if I had to guess, based on present behavior and circumstances in America, the meteor's coming on.
Well, it's that old saying from the Hawaiian kahunas, energy goes where attention flows. And we've been putting a lot of energy into chaos.
Chaos, that's right. Drive-by shootings, children who no longer care about themselves nor the life of others, take life without a thought, without a conscious thought about it, the blank stare of those who have not much inside to care about or live for. And there's a lot of that around right now. And so if our fate is tied to our behavior, I think right now, at least right now, we're doomed. And I don't like to be the bearer of bad news, but those are current circumstances as I read them.
But God bless our free will.
Yes.
Because we can turn it around any time. Martin Luther King said, if I knew the world was going to end tomorrow, I'd still plant my apple tree today. And what he was saying is that I am going to keep my faith, I'm going to keep my hope, because I have been blessed with free will, and I have the ability to make a conscious choice. And those choices every day can change the world. And if you notice in the I'm America map, and this is the third stage of prophecy, and it's known as the mystic message. You notice there's all those coastlines and everything on there?
Yes.
And all these tremendous, horrific changes.
Yes.
And then there are those little yellowed areas, Gobian, Maltone,
yes,
Wahani. And for our listeners out there, we'll talk about that later in more detail so you understand what we're talking about. But that represents the ideal of perfection, of what we can hold in the best and highest good. The mystic message there, it is a message of choice. So that is where I have arrived after 6 years of study with this and working with people, mailing maps out, talking on phones, traveling all over the United States with this. I have arrived at this very simple place. Our choices will make the difference and determine the outcome. We can circumvent the cataclysm and disaster if we'll just simply love.
Well, a lot of the audience is going to mix this up with religion. And I'm not sure that they're wrong, because religion, most of it, preaches roughly the same thing. Love, not hatred. And so do you view it the same way?
Well, of course, I view it.
You're coming at this from sort of a New Age perspective.
I truly am, and I'm probably coming at it in working at a blend of philosophy and science, and then also spirituality. I wouldn't call it religion; I'd call it spirituality. It's kind of interesting. I've had to work so many different angles with this to reach people with the message. And one way when we start talking about love in this, it's a whole other place for people to view the planet, and they're thinking, gosh, I mean, if I could start loving, my neighbor and that kind of stuff, but we can start changing collective consciousness. Well, yes, you certainly can.